All right, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, fellow Pandemonium travelers, this is Seattle Pandemonium Shutdown Day 222 by my count. I should put that on a shirt at this point. 222 days of phased lockdowns, and then basically on my birthday of this year, the George Floyd riots began, and it's just been a continuous spiral ever since then as we approach the election. Although I have said, even after the election, all the way up to inauguration and afterward, the madness isn't necessarily going to stop. And I wanted to touch on something that, if it is true, I heard it yesterday. A guy wrote a book about the current sort of state of the global pandemic and what our sort of best data is about the lethality rate, lethality with comorbidities, etc., and comparing that with all of the secondary fallout from, you know, the other factors at play in, well, shutting down society, like shutting down civilization the way that we did. And I'm not going to say that it wasn't worth it or that we didn't need to do it, but there's going to be hell to pay for a long, long time due to this, again, you can't just shutter civilization and then like reopen it later and everything's fine. And I mean, we'll go over it again, but what they were saying is, and this is just an estimate, that it was a Tom Woods interview from yesterday, I believe. And I'll include the link so you can, hear what I heard from the horse's mouth, as they say. The lockdowns have cost the U.S. economy $1 trillion a month. If we locked down in March, that's 3 months, so then we're at 10, so that's $7 trillion just evaporated from our economy. And again, I'll cite it, something like 60% of our businesses are not going to reopen. We don't know what that looks like, but I kind of know what that looks like. There was this barber shop that's been in my neighborhood since I've lived here, 8 years or something. And it was closed, like everything else. And the other day I noticed it's not just closed, it is now empty. It is no longer a barber shop. It is emptied out. And maybe it looks like somebody's doing some remodeling in there, but maybe it will come back, but I think it's just gone. And man, like, all this stuff is interconnected. I've covered this extensively in these little videos, just how especially a local economy, everything is just interconnected. Bussers save their tips and then they buy a car. The used car dealer uses that to pay his mortgage. The banker uses that revenue from the mortgages to give more business loans, and so now someone can open a restaurant or open another restaurant or store, and it just bootstraps itself up when you have the capital flowing through the local economy. And then you scale that up, then you have a national economy and then a global economy, and there's a hellacious death rate coming for, global food markets. Because we shut down all kinds of commerce, farmers have food rotting in the fields, and I don't just mean here in America, I mean abroad. I mean in places that were already economically compromised or like at risk, essentially. You know, small holding farmers who kind of, they literally, you know, take a cart of, you know, of produce and stuff to the local market and sell it. There's no market for it because they're not exporting it because we shut down, you know, a lot of foreign travel and trade and stuff. Plus, tourism is just absolutely nuked. So if their economy was in any way dependent on tourism, it's done. And so we're running into two potential problems here. Is you have increased economic hardship, which leads to things like drug and alcohol abuse, domestic violence, just general unhappiness and depression, and then eventually things like suicide. This also can lead to conflict, like literal strife, warfare. You get gangs and stuff forming, and before you know it, if there's food shortage because production and growing of food has been disincentivized to such a point that there's now scarcity, or rather shortages, then that can lead to violence as people fight over food, and in this chaos, there are opportunists who will, basically warlords and such, will form up, and you know, regimes can fall due to things like food riots. I mean, people with no food are, I think maybe the only thing more desperate would be people without water or air, right? So we have our domestic problems that we need to solve, but there's a giant, it's like possibly, right? Possibly a cataclysm. They're talking about possibly hundreds of millions of people starving to death. Even if it's not hundreds of millions, like make it 10% of that. It's going to be tens of millions of people. So widespread famine, essentially. And again, basing large kind of apocalyptic projections like that is partially how we ended up in this situation in the first place. So I want to make it clear as I can be, while not sounding like I'm completely contradicting what I just said. The lethality rate for COVID appears to be radically lower than we thought. The people who are at risk are the elders and those with comorbidities. Now, that being said, that doesn't mean it can't kill somebody younger, but it just doesn't seem to tend to. So it was 2 weeks to flatten the curve. We are now, again, like 7 months later. And I mean, for here in Seattle, which was basically ground zero, it's 222 days. Now, our deaths are down, but cases are up. And our cases are not up in such numbers, and that's, I think, across the whole state, really. I'd have to double check my map again, but it's up in the county, but we have lots of hospitals and stuff here. And if you're not having symptoms, like Trump got this bug, right? He tested positive, and then he went to the hospital, and then he was fine. Fuck you! Fucking shithead. God, I hate South Lake Union sometimes. Anyways, that's what crosswalks are for, boys and girls. That's not a crosswalk. Anyways, so again, that barbershop I was talking about, it's now gone, I think, unless they just moved them out to, you know, remodel, but I doubt it. I mean, I feel like they're gone. It's gone. That's sort of the beginning of the economic meltdown that is coming. And we've never really seen anything like it. And it was a self-inflicted wound, which is also something people have been saying we've never really seen before. This wasn't a dust bowl. This wasn't some kind of market collapse. This wasn't a run on the banks or anything. This wasn't a real estate market collapse. This was us basically voluntarily, let's say, call it sort of voluntarily, locking ourselves at home because we were told is what we needed to do. Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. We're going to kind of like argue about this forever, but we did what we were told. I have the video of the empty streets from months and months ago. We did what we were told and took the most prosperous economy in the history of the country and drowned it in the bath. And calculating the economic hardship of what that means is, I mean, I don't know if you can. I mean, it's like what is the cost of human suffering, right? And this many people and at this scale, because it's not over. The hard times have only just begun. Like how people recover things like, well, we deal with the like eviction cascade that is possibly coming without severe government intervention, which is basically, it's going to basically be like a form of capital or of communism, I suppose, or socialism, I suppose. Like we are going to force landlords to eat the cost of people occupying their real estate but not paying, or the state will pay them, or there'll just be a giant federal subsidy, so we're just going to turn on the printing machines and print more money. And we deal with the inflation and or hyperinflation that's coming. I don't know. It's the economic nightmare of having the not free market intervening in local and small business and creating some of these problems while trying to solve some of these problems. And it's just gonna, and then we're gonna argue about that. Like, what is the best way to provide relief and recovery, right? What is the best way to do that? Like, again, they're talking about a giant stimulus, and even Trump said something like, you know, they keep putting these trash bills in front of him, like, hey, sign this that has the stimulus, but also has all this other crap in it. And then he's like, no, just put, you know, if you just put $1,200 per citizen on it, I'll sign it. But they want to stuff it full of pork because it's Congress, and that's what they do. So another $1,000 Trump bucks to everybody, and then we're gonna call that recovery. Like, is that gonna cover people's rent? Like, I don't know. I just don't think that. I don't think that some kind of giant stimulus package is going to trillions and trillions of dollars to try to keep everyone solvent is actually going to be a solution to all this. It's I mean, it's kind of nightmarish to think about but if we don't have some means of alleviating things like, you know, rent and preventing, again, that cascade of evictions, well, it's going to start looking like Soylent Green out there. There's just going to be people sleeping everywhere on, like, in the streets and everything. I mean, more than there already are. It's staggering to think about, and I'm watching people pretend like, oh, we're just gonna, like, oh, the economy is gonna be a V-shaped recovery and then everything's gonna be fine. And it's like, I do not agree. I do not think so. No, I think that there is an economic meltdown coming that goes all the way to a federal level. It it will involve things like the Federal Reserve, because if we just start printing money, we're going to create all kinds of other economic headaches, and then it's just going to keep descending down rather than boosting back up. So I don't know, maybe I'm wrong. I'm not an economist. I'm just watching all the negative indicators, and there appears to be like just this whole interlocking series of problems, and everything. I mean, we drowned the baby in the bathwater, and we haven't begun to feel the effects yet. Not really. We've had the fear. We've had the anxiety. Oh no, what's going to happen? Oh, well, we're about to find out, especially as we try to reopen things. And God forbid people reopen and then there's like a spike and then they get forced to close again. Ugh, just demoralizing. All right, that's enough for me for one day. It's Thursday. Tomorrow's Friday. We made it another week. So, all right, I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.